Today we talk about Darkest Night, a game published by Fantasy Flight Games, by AEG. No, this is a game by Victory Point Games, but just looking at the graphics on the box and then the graphics and illustrations of the components, it could be a game published by one of the majors, but actually it is published by Victory Point Games, really the little company that could, and that with this game gives us more evidence of the new level of attention to detail and to components that they are putting in the games that they are publishing, so that is great, and this is really a good looking game. As for the content, Darkest Night is a fantasy game, a fully co-op game where a party of 4 heroes fights against the evil Lord of Darkness, Death, Decay, all these things that the evil lords of fantasy always come with, and the evil Lord of is poisoning the land, spreading blights, and the heroes need to stop him before it is too late. As I was reading the manual and then I was looking at the components originally, I thought, this looks like Arkham Horror cum Defenders of the Realm, but for Eurogamers. And actually, after playing the game, my intuition proved true, or at least this is the way in which the game felt to me, which is not necessarily a bad thing at all. Anyhow, let's not go too fast here. Let me share some details about the game before I share my conclusions. The game is always played with 4 characters. Here I have the Knight, the Seer, the Acolyte, and the Scholar, but you also have the Druid, the Priest, the Rogue, the Prince, the Wizard, so it is a good gallery of pretty much standard fantasy characters to choose from, but you always have 4. Doesn't matter how many players you have, you need to start with 4, and that means that if you have less than 4 players, you will split the characters among the players. Each character comes with a card that will allow you to keep track of 2 fundamental stats of the character. These are Grace and Secrecy. Secrecy, sort of self-explanatory, it just tracks how well hidden the character is. Some actions will cause the character to reveal him or herself, and the Necromancer gets a better sense of where the character is. For example, when the character attacks one of the minions of the Necromancer. Other actions, such as traveling, will help the hero recover secrecy. Of course, the more secrecy you have, the better things are for you. The other stats that you see here is Grace, which is very similar to the traditional concept of life points or health points in other games. There's a slight twist here, and I'm not exactly sure why actually that twist was added. The idea is that in this game, if you take a hit in combat, you die. A single hit will kill you. Technically, you have only 1 health point. But if you would receive a wound in combat, and that would kill you, of course, then you can spend a grace point to avoid that hit, and you simply reduce your grace by 1. That means that if your grace is down to 0, you are not dead yet, you still have your original 1 life point, but the next time that you take a wound, you cannot prevent it by using grace, and the character dies. Again, I'm not sure why the difference between this and the traditional health points, life points, because it seems to me that the idea here works very similarly. In any case, each character also has a deck of ability cards, special power cards. I don't remember what the technical name is, but you pretty much know what these are, because many games have similar things. There are 4 initial cards for each character. At the beginning of the game, you choose 3 of those 4, you shuffle the 4th back into the deck. Each character has different decks, and these really are the elements of each character that give that character his or her specific personality. You may have actions. In order to use the ability on this card, you need to spend an action. Tactics, these are used during combat. Bonuses, they apply, well, whenever the effect described on the card applies. And during the game, the characters may be able to gain more abilities. In that case, those are drawn from the deck that belongs to the character. Here you also see a turn tracker that indicates heroes that still have to act and heroes that already have acted in a turn. In many games, this is not that important because you go around the table and the heroes always activate in the same sequence. Here, from turn to turn, you can choose to activate the heroes in different order, and this is why it is useful to have such trackers. And here, manipulating the order in which characters activate is very important. There are many cases in which you do need to activate certain heroes to take care of certain types of business before other heroes go, and at that point only they can do something that is truly useful for the group. The game is played on this board here. Here I have the mounted version set up, but my copy also came with a cardboard version of the same map. The map is divided in locations connected by paths that the characters and the evil guy of the game, the Necromancer, use to travel. All characters start in the monastery, which is also the area where the characters can rest and can be protected against the Necromancer. And the Necromancer starts here in the ruins. At the beginning of the game, you also have 4 relics on the board, but the relics are hidden in these chests here. The players need to open the chest in order to be able to retrieve a relic, and to do that, a character needs to be in the area where a chest is and needs to spend 3 keys. How you acquire these keys, I will explain later. And those relics are key to win the game. The players need to retrieve those relics to win the game. At the beginning of the game, you also place 6 blights on the board. The blights are represented by those counters, and they indicate, well, bad stuff that the Necromancer is spreading across the land. Those may be monsters that the Necromancer generates, skeletons, vampires, shades, may just be negative effects such as curses. Each blight has a number that indicates the blight's might. That's printed on the front of the counter. The back of the blight gives you more information. Well, you see again the blight's might, but then there may be a reminder of the effect of the blight, or in case of blights that represent monsters, the combat values of the blight, of the monster, in which case that would be a defense factor of 4, and the characters that are attacking the skeletons need to roll 4 or more, and the number that it takes to elude the enemy, and also the effect, what happens if you fail to fight against or to elude the monster. In this case, you receive a hit, and if you do not have grace points to prevent that from happening, then your character dies. When you're setting up the game, you draw a card from the map deck and you place a blight in each location on the map. The card tells you which location receives which blight. You also have the monastery, but during setup you ignore that. You do not place blights on the monastery space, so you only have 6 blights on the board. You also use these cards anytime that you need to add a new blight to the board. You flip a card and you place and you add the blight indicated for the location where you need to add a blight. These cards are also used to indicate the treasures that the players find. Each time that a character is successful in a search action, then you reveal a card and you simply see on the card which item has been found depending on the location in which the character was looking. The game is divided in turns. At the beginning of the game, the darkness counter is at the beginning of the track. Each character is activated 1 in a turn. Then after each character took 1 action, the Necromancer takes a turn. And you simply alternate until either the players or the Necromancer win the game. What happens during your turn? Well, at the beginning of each player's turn, or maybe I should say each character's turn, the character may lose secrecy. If the character is in the same location with the Necromancer, -1 point of secrecy. If the character is carrying a relic, -1 point of secrecy. Then you have the event step. The active character will reveal an event card and will simply resolve the effect of that. This is all bad stuff. Enemies, spies, undead, people coming after you, just bad, evil effects. And some of these effects may change depending on the secrecy level of the character. The lower your secrecy is, the harder the opponent, the enemy that you are fighting against. Same happens here, and again you have these two values, defense and the number it takes to elude an opponent. Some things are just different effects, not monsters that you confront directly. But in any case, the active character needs to go through an event in order to then take his or her own action. After the event, the active hero takes one action, only one. The hero can travel to an adjacent location, and the hero also gains a point of secrecy by doing so. The hero can simply hide. The hero again gains a point of secrecy, but also can refresh his or her powers. Some of the powers that I showed you earlier need to be exhausted in order to be used, and you take the hide action to refresh them. A hero can also attack a blight or the necromancer if the hero is in the same location with one of these. How does that work? Well, the hero needs to roll against the might of the blight. In this case, that would be a 5. Usually you roll 1d6. You may have bonuses that will give you extra dice, but usually bonuses only give you extra dice. They do not increase the number that you roll. So a +1 in this game means usually +1 die. Only very few effects will allow you to improve the number that you rolled. You simply roll the number of dice that apply, 1 or more, and you do not add the results. You look at the results individually. If at least one of your results is equal to or higher than the number you're rolling against, then you have passed the challenge. If you're attacking a blight, the blight is destroyed. If you're attacking the Necromancer and you inflict a hit, you win the game. Problem is that the combat defense factor of the Necromancer is 7, and rolling 7 on a d6 is pretty tough. And as I said, it is not easy to come by ways in which you can have extra numbers added to your result. But that's the way you need to act if you want to destroy the Necromancer. If you're in the monastery, you can pray. That may allow you to recover grace points. If you are in a location other than the monastery, you may search the location. This is extremely important. Locations have a search number. For example, the forest has 4, the ruins have 4, the swamp has 4, the castle only 2. You roll, again, the number of dice that applies, and if you roll with at least 1 die, the search number or more, then you can reveal a map card and you receive the benefit that is emphasized, that is described on the card. And some locations have more resources of a certain type than others. The ruins have a lot of keys, but not much else. The forest has keys and treasures, so you kind of need to concentrate on the areas that are more likely to give you the resources that you're looking for. Again, we are looking for keys so that then we can acquire relics. This is very important because there are only 2 ways of winning the game. One is if a hero is holding a relic, the relic gives a +1 on the die that you roll, and this is how you kill the Necromancer. A hero with a relic attacks the Necromancer, rolls a 6, then the Necromancer is dead, and the heroes win the game. However, the Necromancer usually will be surrounded by blights, and if you're attacking the Necromancer when blights are present, then the blights are sacrificed before the Necromancer is destroyed. That means means that towards the end of the game you will need to have your heroes gather around the Necromancer. Some heroes will take care of the blights, and then when no blights are around, the hero that is holding the relic will attack the Necromancer, and you hope at that point to roll a 6. Of course, you combine your Holy Relic with abilities that allow you to roll extra dice, and that increases your chances of destroying the Necromancer. The other way to win the game is to have 3 Holy Relics in the monastery. At that time, when that happens, then you can execute a ritual that will simply ban the Necromancer, and again, you win the game. After the players have taken their turn, the Necromancer will act. First, you add a point to the darkness track, and when certain thresholds are reached on the darkness track, then increasingly severe effects will apply. For example, the Necromancer may be able to add more than 1 blight per turn to the board. Then the Necromancer moves. I will not give you the details, but first the Necromancer will look for heroes that have a low value in secrecy. Otherwise, you roll. If the Necromancer cannot find anybody, then you roll a die and the Necromancer moves randomly on the map, and the Necromancer will then drop a new blight in the location in which the Necromancer ends movement. The Necromancer adds blights to the board. If there are 4 blights in a location, there cannot be a 5th one. But if the Necromancer goes there and would add the blight there, that blight is added to the monastery instead. If there ever are 4 blights in the monastery area, then the corruption of the land has become absolutely out of control. The heroes cannot do anything against it anymore, and the players lose the game. The game clearly has strong resemblances with Arkham Horror and Defenders. As you play, those similarities are obvious, but your overall feel of the game is different. Here there is a much clearer sense, much clearer Euro game feel to the experience. The theme is leaner, yet at the same time it is not completely overwhelmed by the mechanics. The mechanics still convey part of the theme, especially the AI that regulates the behavior of the Necromancer, really achieves a nice both Euro feel, Euro game feel, while also creating a story. And definitely there is that element of using resources, looking at numbers and making strategy there. I wouldn't say using gamey elements, but you need to try to manipulate the way in which the Necromancer will behave, and having a number more, a number less on your secrecy track is the way in which you do that, or at least in which you increase your odds of manipulating the Necromancer into going where you need him to go. But even though there are similarities, still I found that the game has enough of an identity to be, well, its own thing. It is similar to Arkham Horror, but it can be played in 2 hours as opposed to much longer playtime that it takes to complete Arkham Horror. On the other hand, this is definitely a more meaty game than you have when you compare this with other games in the catalog by Victory Point Games. You always need 4 characters, so that means that if you play solitaire, which is perfectly possible, you need to maneuver all 4 characters. I do not mind that, I like it, but I know that not all solitaire players like that, or solitaire gamers that enjoy to have just 1 character to concentrate on. So if you're looking at this game for the solitaire option and you're the type of player, maybe this is not the best option for you. Other than that, this is a game that I think has a lot to offer. There is fun and replay value in experimenting with different teams of characters. I found that the variety of the blights maybe wasn't huge, but that's something that can be, of course, easily increased with expansions. I like the events very much, and the way in which events work in different ways in different parts of the game. So definitely a game that has interesting challenges, interesting choices for you to make, and ways in which you can develop a strategy around such challenges in order to, well, to try to win, pretty much. That's what what you're trying to do here. But this is a game design that I enjoyed. If you like Arkham Horror, if you like Defenders of the Realm, you do not mind a game that definitely is similar to them from a certain point of view, but still has enough of individuality to be something, then I think that you may enjoy Darkest Night.